Welcome to Reddissimo, home of great Reddit stories. Don't forget to subscribe now.
AITA for manspreading on a plane. A few months ago, I, 26M, was alone on a long flight, 6 hours. I had a middle seat between a young woman, 20SF, in the window seat, and a woman, 30SF, on the aisle. I'm tall and am never comfortable on planes. My knees always dig into the seat in front and it can be quite painful. I usually try to take a walk around the airport before flights to stretch my legs, but neglected to this time. It was Spirit Airlines, so even less legroom than usual. About half an hour after takeoff, I found my left knee inching to the side for the sweet relief of open space, specifically, the no man's land in between seats, level with the shared armrest. But I wasn't paying attention to my knee the entire time. I'll concede it's possible that at some point I was occupying space that rightfully belonged to my window seat neighbor. All was well for 2 hours. At this point, the woman in the window seat called over the flight attendant. She asked her something like, "Could you tell him to keep his damned leg in his own damned seat?" With horror, I understood she was talking about me. I instantly retracted my leg in deep shame. She added something about his enormous penis. My understanding was that it was meant to be a snide reference to the idea that spreading your legs is about male genital comfort. But she wasn't speaking very clearly, and the flight attendant, 50SF, didn't seem to understand her. The flight attendant asked her some sort of clarifying question, but she didn't answer, and eventually the attendant went away. I had been shocked into silence, but when the flight attendant left, I frantically began to apologize. But she refused to speak to me. She acted like she didn't hear me. Instead, she started furiously texting on her phone. Yeah, texting during a flight. I thought it was weird too. Aisle seat woman said she had some extra space on her side I could use, but then promptly went to sleep. Oh well. I tried again to apologize to window seat woman, but again she ignored me. I went from embarrassed to confused. I kept replaying it in my head, wondering why she didn't simply ask me to move my knee instead of calling over the attendant. I started sneaking peeks at her phone. My defense was that I was baffled by her behavior and wanted answers. I'll admit that I was being judgmental, too. Here's why: she spent the last 3 hours of the flight watching TikToks about shaming obese people and texting someone she called Poppy. I didn't see all of it, but a significant portion was definitely about me. She wrote, "Men really do be too much sometimes," with a laughing emoji. She ignored me the whole rest of the flight and I ignored her. I got a good but painful workout of whatever muscle it is that keeps your knees together. Comments. Whiting. 1. This is a known, reoccurring issue. You know you will feel better with more leg space. Stop pinching pennies and pay for an aisle seat or an exit seat. There are options. 2. By wanting the woman to tell you if she is bothered by your invasion of her space, you make it her responsibility instead of just not doing it. Women can feel too vulnerable to confront a tall guy, your own admission, by themselves, especially when they are stuck at the window seat and cannot exit if the guy gets angry. She didn't call the attendant to tell you to move. She called her to have an authority figure to help her make a point. 3. And then there is the snooping. Seriously, dude? You thought what? Oh, this woman has already found me intrusive before, let's double down. I'm a small woman and men on plane flights constantly shove their knees into my personal space, even when they have enough room to sit with their legs together. It's exhausting having to try to figure out if I should bother asking them to move, especially because I dislike conflict and sometimes they either get mad, and then I'm stuck sitting next to an angry person much larger than me for hours, or else fake an apology and then go back to doing it 10 minutes later. If you physically can't fit into your space, I'm not going to get mad. Yeah, maybe you should book a larger seat, but I don't know what your financial situation is or why you need to fly, but if you are able to fit, even if it's less comfortable, please keep your body parts to yourself and don't put me in the position of having to ask for basic personal space. As a small woman, if they aren't taking up your space in general, they think it's appropriate to use you as furniture for their comfort. The amount of times a strange man has come up and rested his arm on my head. I had one asshole rest his newspaper on my head on a crowded NYC subway train, 1990s. Imagine his shock when I grabbed the paper and threw it off the train at the next stop. AITA. My sister used to get groped on the subway. She punched more than one guy in the gut. She should have aimed lower. That woman is nasty. She could simply have first complained to you directly, and if you refuse to budge, she can then call the flight attendant. Contrast that with the other lady who was very polite and accommodating. You seem oversensitive either about your height or something. Why were you so absorbed about what a childish immature adult thinks about you? You seemed so engrossed by it that it consumed the rest of the flight. You might have some nagging insecurities. That is something you should meditate on, and not that small girl. AITA for blowing up at my uncle for coming out as trans? The title is a bit weird, but there's a good explanation. My uncle, 64, has been married for 42 years and has 4 kids. Her and her wife have been separated for a few months but are still trying to sort out their differences. Every year around March, the whole family holds a sort of spring banquet. Due to their separation, my uncle and her wife arrived, well, separately. My uncle's wife arrived first with the kids. Not long after my uncle showed up. She was wearing a full face of makeup and a dress. At first, everyone thought it was some kind of joke and started laughing, but soon realized it wasn't. When we sat down for dinner, she fully came out and said she identified as woman now. My uncle's wife almost immediately burst into tears and left the room. Her eldest went after her while the rest of us stared at my uncle in shock. Now, here's where it gets interesting. My uncle has expressed not feeling like a man to some of the family, including me. It was why we pushed for her to get a divorce. When they got separated, we thought my uncle had finally told her, come to find out she did not. Back to the dinner table. My uncle's wife and son had run out and the youngest was in hysterics. So, I lashed out. It wasn't the smartest thing to do looking back, but I told her she was extremely selfish and if she thought anyone was proud, she'd been snorting too much coke. She left immediately. A few days ago, my mother called me and said I'd taken it too far and that my uncle wasn't responding to anyone's calls or texts. I know I was a bit harsh, but it wasn't the right place or time to reveal that, especially when she hadn't told her wife and kids. For everyone to know something like this was up, except for her, I honestly feel terrible for my uncle's wife. This is a 64-year-old we're talking about, to come out that way after so long. I love my uncle. My uncle was the first person to teach me how to ride a bike, drive, but this is just too much. I think I could have been more sensitive, so, AITA. Edit, seen a few comments about this, so I quickly want to say, she said she was fine with using uncle stroke dad etc. but wanted to be referred to as she stroke her and her new name. Edit 2, this is not written the best but, her wife and kids didn't know. Comments. AITA. This is not the kind of thing that you keep secret from your spouse and kids and then suddenly hit them with it in a public setting. Your comment was indeed inappropriate, but I would excuse you given shock of realizing that this was a surprise for spouse and kids as well. The op was harsh, but I agree AITA. The uncle was beyond disrespectful to her wife of over 40 years and the kids they share. I imagine it took a lot of courage for the wife to show up. She's was likely struggling with a huge life change after 40+ years. The uncle was not only disrespectful but also selfish. She owed it to her wife and kids to tell them the truth way before this family get-together. OP's sentiment was right but approach was wrong. So the wife went around for 3 months having no idea why they were separated. That is just beyond cruel, and then to announce it. This is like farcically bad communication. Everyone sucks here, meaning you and uncle. I am inclined to agree with you that this was not the appropriate time and place for her to come out to wife and kids, but at the same time, why was it your place to lash out? I don't believe in transitioning, I am not transphobic, but were it to take place, the way your uncle went about it was cruel and mean. Well, glad she is now picking calls. I was worried a bit when you mentioned she wasn't picking her calls, hoping she won't go jumping off a bridge.
AITA for not babysitting my cousin and blowing up my family. I, 33F, am a widow and a mother to 2 twin boys. My husband Ryan passed away 3 years ago. His best friend Alex, 39M, became a constant in our lives after Ryan passed, helping with the kids, the house, and helping with my grief. After a year with my and Ryan's family's blessing, we started dating. I am the eldest child on both sides of a large family. 5 siblings and 10 aunts and uncles, 5 on each side, who had at least 4 kids each. I have always been the designated babysitter. Sat at the kids' table until I was in my 20s and got married because I had to watch the kids, missed out on activities on family vacations for the same reason. My mom's family is worse about it than my dad's. 6 months ago a baby boy was placed with my mom's youngest brother Michael and his wife Mary. The baby's story is sad and tragic, but I can't get into it because of word count. They want to adopt him, but the bio-mom's parents were fighting them. From what I've been told, they have substance issues as well. While this was going on, I saw signs that Alex was going to propose. For my birthday this year, he planned a big night out in a big city about an hour away. Reservation at a very fancy restaurant, fancy new outfits, etc. I was pretty sure that he was going to propose that night. 2 weeks ago, I get a call from Mary saying they have court against the baby's grandparents on my birthday and can I watch him. I explained no and why, and she lost it. Yelled at me, then called my mom, who then called me and yelled at me. I stood my ground. Without telling me, my mom told Michael and Mary the first would do it. Told me later, it was because if they showed up, she knew I wouldn't say no. They showed up mid-afternoon on my birthday with the baby and I again told them no and I did not tell my mom I would do it. They were furious and I almost had to call the cops to have them removed. Anticipating drama from my family, I turned off my phone and went about my day. Alex did propose and is now my fiancé. The messages and texts I got when I turned my phone back on were vile and from nearly everyone on my mom's side. Accusing me of trying to sabotage the adoption, calling me a whore for moving on from Ryan so quickly. It was disgusting. And my dad tried to defend me and my mom got so mad she moved out and is staying with another uncle. So my siblings are harassing me saying I ruined our parents' marriage. I suppose Alex and I could have cancelled the reservation and gone another night, but he worked so hard on everything and I didn't want to hurt him by cancelling. So, AITA. Comments. NTA. You are experiencing an extinction burst. You said no. For 2 weeks your aunt, your uncle and your mother fought that no, and then ignored it. Then they were surprised and enraged when your no turned out to be actually real. Now the group of people who have become accustomed to ignoring your no are amping up the abuse, because if they overwhelm you into apologizing, they can go back to using you for free childcare whenever. This is crucial, hold firm. If you roll over now, you will teach them all that calling you a whore is the new way to get you to do whatever they want. If you let them wear themselves out against your one simple no, then they will take a while, but eventually they will learn that you actually have boundaries, desires, and a life, and you deserve the basics of respect. You might have to block some of them while they scream and cry it out. It's a tantrum. I bet you've handled a few of those in your time. Congratulations on your engagement. May you build a family that respects each other's boundaries. Thank you. I didn't realize there was a term for it, but that's definitely what's going on. Alex and I are already discussing going low contact with most, and no contact with a few. He's been helping me set boundaries for myself, which is new and frightening. There's a term for everything, LOL. Congratulations on your engagement and your new and proper boundaries. NTA. I honestly hope that the adoption does fall through if they can't be relied on to find reliable childcare when their first choice tells them 2 weeks in advance, and as soon as they asked, that they have a scheduling conflict. Instead of being responsible parents and finding alternate childcare. Even from your large extended family, they decided to gamble on the one person who told them no, to caving in and canceling her birthday plans because they forced her into it. They bet their adoption process on a game of chicken and lost. This reflects poorly on their parenting decisions.
AITA for telling my younger sister to either tidy up her messy hair, or she won't be allowed to attend our grandfather's funeral. A little while back, our beloved grandfather passed away. He lived a very long and happy life. He was 98 years old, so rather than having a mournful funeral, my parents wanted the event to be more of a celebration of Grandpa's life. I, 24M, was at my parents' house for the weekend, in order to attend our grandfather's funeral. I and my parents were all ready and waiting for my 14-year-old sister, Christina, we usually just call her Chris, to hurry up. Chris used to be a sweet person, but nowadays she fancies herself a cool rebel. In reality, she's a bit of a brat. Chris came downstairs, and her hair was unacceptably messy. Actually, her hair is always long and messy. However, our mother and grandmother insist that her untidy hair makes her look cute, and so Chris just keeps it this way. I know it sounds weird, but I felt like the least my little sister could do was to straighten her hair out and look more formal and respectful. I wasn't in the mood to deal with her usual thrash that day, so I bluntly told her to tidy up her hair or don't come to the funeral. My sister responded by swearing at me, and I got into a short, but vicious verbal fight with her. In the end, Chris was crying and she was furious at me, as were both of my parents. We all arrived at the funeral somewhat late, and Christina was the only one in our family who was crying during the funeral. ETA, some people here suggest that Chris's hair is naturally curly. But that's not the case. It's naturally plain and straight. But the way my sister does things, her hair is just kind of all over the place, like a rock musician kinda look. IMO, not an appropriate aesthetic for a funeral. Comments. White. She lost her grandfather too, you know. You took a day that already had to be hard on her and made it even harder for no reason. She's 14. She's still discovering who she is in the world and what her style is. Other family members have been encouraging her looks, that's why she keeps doing it. And the fact that they keep commenting how cute it is on her clearly means they have no problem with it. Most importantly, you are not her parent. Your parents, who were also there, are her parents and didn't seem to have any issues with it themselves. You caused a fight that didn't need to happen on a day that was already hard on everyone. I understand that you felt you were doing the right thing and trying to get her to show your grandfather some respect, but this wasn't the time, place, or way to do it. This argument also made the whole family late to their grandfather's funeral. I would argue that causing the family to be late to the funeral because of this is actually more disrespectful to his memory than a hairstyle. I would say that having a rock musician type of hairstyle to a celebration of life event doesn't sound disrespectful at all. It was not meant to be a sad, mournful affair, but rather a joyous one. If only OP could have removed the stick up his butt, they could have celebrated Grandpa's life to the fullest extent. A friend of mine had a celebration of life for her mom with a cookout and splash pads and other water things for the kids, because her mom loved seeing the kids having fun more than anything else. I promise none of us worried about hair that day. And it was possibly the most beautiful tribute to an amazing woman I've ever seen. Why are OP's feelings and point of view more important than anyone else? Where does he get off imposing what he thinks is right on other people? So much of what he wrote shows he is an AH. The funeral was supposed to be a celebration of his life. Parents and grandmother liked this cute look. Probably the grandfather liked it too. I sense a lot of jealousy from OP. Chris hadn't even spoken to OP, but apparently he views her as dealing out bullshit already. OP needed to chill out big time. He was taking out his grieving for his grandfather on his sister. And to top it off, imagine visible weeping at a funeral. I mean, who does that? It brings shame to the family. AITA for telling my wife to cut her losses and focus on our family. My wife and I have 4 kids. She has Noah, 12, and Ellie, 9, from a previous relationship, and we have Rose, 4, and Jackson, 9 months, together. A couple things important to mention is that my wife has another kid, Ava, 14, also with her ex, that lives with her sister and that her ex moved back to his home country after the divorce and has nothing to do with the kids. Shortly after the divorce, 4 years ago, Ava and my wife got into an argument. Ava blamed her mom for her dad leaving and it got pretty heated. In the heat of the moment, my wife destroyed what could be described as Ava's comfort item and told Ava to get the damn out of her house. Ava ran out of the house, the police and CPS got involved, and Ava was put in foster care, then went to live with my wife's sister once she got a big enough place. My wife was ordered to go to anger management, therapy, and parenting classes. Ava was brought back to us 3 times, but every time she was brought back she'd run away or raise hell until she got to stay with her aunt. My wife's sister got full custody because of that. My wife has been trying to fix her relationship with Ava since the incident. She'd beg her sister to let her visit, sent toys to her sister's apartment, sent letters, called and texted repeatedly, but Ava never answered. They moved out of state 2 years ago, and just before the move, Ava reached out to my wife just to tell her that she wants nothing to do with her and to leave her alone. My wife honored her request until recently when she was going to be in their city for work. She reached out to both her sister and Ava but got no response. She went to Ava's school to try to speak with her, which turned into a big issue, and Ava and my wife's sister ended up getting a restraining order on my wife preventing her from contacting them or going near them. She's been so upset since then, which is understandable. Ava and her aunt should have been more understanding towards my wife. I couldn't see her like that, so I told her it's time to cut her losses and focus on her family now. She listened to my advice, but her family, who have been pressuring her to try to fix the relationship, is calling her a bad mom and accusing her of abandoning Ava. They got a damn restraining order, so I don't know what they expect her to do, but now she's upset over it again, so I wanted to know if I was the AH in respect of my advice. Comments. Info. To clarify, your wife told Ava, when Ava was 10, to get the fuck out and destroyed Ava's things? Edit. With that new information, AITA, your wife is a big AH, and I hope your other kids will be okay. I hope Ava and her aunt have a great life without you two in it. Doing a little maths, it's obvious Ops and Ava's mum were in an adulterous relationship. That only explains why the divorce was finalized 4 years ago and Op and Ava's mum have a 4-year-old child together. It's probably led to the demise of the marriage. That's probably why Ava blamed her mum for the divorce, but it seemed her mum showed no little or no remorse and even lashed out at Ava. Again, were Ava to live with the mum, she would have to come face to face with her partner in crime for her parents' divorce. Her mum has probably lost her forever. They are both AHs. And I don't believe for a second that was the extent of it. A child isn't removed from the home and placed in foster care just because a mother throws out a stuffed animal. My money is on a history of physical abuse. Yeah, there's way more being downplayed here. Even with temp foster care, it takes a lot for CPS to sever parental rights. The aunt would not have gotten full custody easily, which means mom failed at everything CPS required and she continues to break rules. I don't blame Ava for telling her to leave her alone. The #1 goal of CPS is to keep the family together. It takes a lot more than a destroyed comfort object to lose custody. Exactly. I 100,000% agree. My husband tried to get custody of his nieces when his sister and her ex lost custody, and they were doing drugs, DV, and other things, and they still wanted reunion. So sad.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so. This will help us grow. Thank you once again. You guys rock.